Taped from New Jersey, it's the SNL Nerds, the show where two comics from New Jersey nerd out about Saturday Night Live. I'm your co-host, John Trumbull.
And I'm your co-host, Darren Patterson.
Hey Darren, how you doing?
Doing good, doing well, doing good. I'm doing great because, hey, we got ourselves a guest here in the on the podcast, as you say.
Yep, your story checks out. Yep, we do indeed have a guest. It is a guest that is familiar to both of us. It should be familiar to regular listeners of the podcast. He's been on the show at least a couple times before, I think, and he's also mentioned on the show rather frequently. It's super producer Frank Hablawi.
Hey, it's me. I'm the guy they said. That's the dude.
Yeah.
Hey. Mentioned on the show, I would say a lot more before I cut out most of my mentions. Because, man, you guys going in on me real hard.
We're big fans.
I would not call that fandom. No, maybe toxic fandom.
Okay. In our defense, we didn't know you were listening.
True. I mean, yeah, you have repeatedly not understood how this works.
Yeah. I do not, and I refuse to learn.
I want to ask you a question right off the bat. Do you listen to all of this show?
I do. Every week, all of it. And
we send you the audio file. You listen to it from beginning to end, and then you make the occasional edit. I will give you a heads up if I think there's something that we should cut out, like either an awkward moment or a weird pause or something.
Or like an incredibly loud Darren page turn. Which is
you
now
heard
a
that?
Drinking game on the Twitter. I guess on the Mastodon, whatever we're on now.
Whatever.
But yeah. Oh, take another shot, guys. Take another shot.
Shots.
Yeah, Darren and I have talked about that. Darren and I differ in that Darren writes out his notes on a yellow legal pad, like a Luddite. I write my notes on my iPhone.
Yeah, it's like a Gen Zer.
Yeah,
and you can sometimes hear Darren flipping the pages on that. On his
a Luddite and a Gen Zer, and they do a podcast.
That's right.
Yeah. For those that can't, another show right there.
Yeah, for those that can't see that, I'm wearing my. I'm reading my notes on a yellow legal pad, looking through my bifocals. A nice warm cup of bran milk by my side. Because
he's speaking in one of those.
Did you say bran milk?
I was trying to think. of like something bran, and I don't know. This is why I got kicked out the Groundlings. I cannot improv.
Bran milk, which is, as far as I know, not a thing.
You know what? If you can milk an oat, you can milk a bran.
Sure.
I'm sure it's coming.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're saying.
So the reason we have our producer, super producer, Frank Hablawi, and it is Hablawi with an H, not a K, as some of our Twitter followers seem to think.
Whichever way makes you happy. Honestly, I don't want to make anybody upset about this. If you need to pronounce the silent K, you can.
Well, I think it's just how I happen to say your name. The first and last name were running together, and so a lot of people were assuming that your name was Frank Hablawi.
It works.
Which amused me to no end.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like the name of a wrestler or something.
It really, it's like a sound effect from the Batman TV show. So the reason Frank volunteered to come on is we are covering the Weird Al Yankovic movie UHF, and we decided to do this because there's the new Weird Al biopic that's on Roku right now. What's the name of the biopic again? I'm blanking on it.
Weird. The Al Yankovic story.
Right, where Daniel Radcliffe is playing Weird Al.
Mm-hmm.
And we also decided to do UHF because SNL cast member, SNL alum Victoria Jackson is in it. So
she's definitely there.
She exists.
She is there. She is in the movie. She shows up in the movie once in a while, sometimes even in focus, sometimes even in frame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is weird, like how she's in the beginning of the movie, she's at the end of the movie, and like sporadically she'll like maybe pop up. Like I don't think she has too many scenes with Weird Al himself, and there's supposed to be a couple.
She disappears for long stretches of this movie. I was kind of surprised how little she was in this movie. Now, this was actually my first time watching this movie all the way through.
Wow.
From what I understand, both of you saw this movie like back in the day, right?
Yeah. Well, Frank, you go first.
go ahead. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I watched this. I can't remember how early. I may have seen this as early as 1989 when it came out. I think I did, but I wasn't like journaling films back then. Certainly not on legal pads like Darren,
Sure.
because he was already in his mid 50s. But
I was on AARP.
That's right. But yeah, it has been baked into my DNA. Most of what I grew up thinking of comedy, at least had some roots in this film. And I think as we talk about it, more and more of that's going to show. But yeah, I remember distinctly talking to people about the films that came out in 1989 and what this movie came out against, and it's shocking.
Yeah.
I remember the summer of '89 very, very well. But like Darren, you talk about your experience with this movie.
Yeah. It's. I mean, you look at like most dorky, nerdy, awkward teens. I have a huge love for Weird Al Yankovic. I don't believe I saw this in the theater because this came out July 21st, 1989. So I was probably around 12. So this should have been like I'm a target demographic for this film, but I don't think I saw it in the theaters. But I do remember it coming on quite a bit on Channel 11 and Channel 9 every Sunday afternoon or so. So I probably watched it there, and I really liked it. I remember, it like it's like it's a movie that's like very kind of quirky and dorky. A lot of pop culture references. A lot of it going over my head. Like I saw this before I saw Close Encounters, so I didn't get that whole mashed potato volcano joke, or or the we don't need no stinking badges or joke. But I still loved it because I was a huge fan of Weird Al Yankovic. I still remember fondly seeing his videos like Eat It and like a surgeon. I'm a big fan of. I mean, I don't want to sound like some Weird Al purist, but I'm a fan of his deeper cuts. I like I Lost on Jeopardy. She drives like crazy. Another one rides the bus. Stuff like that I really dig too. So yeah, this movie was right in my wheelhouse when it came out, but I did not see it in the theaters.
Yeah, I was trying to remember, like, when I popped this movie in this morning, I was thinking it came out earlier than it did. I was thinking it came out like 1985, 1986. So I was surprised when I looked it up and it's like, oh, no, this came out in '89. And you were saying it was July 21st, '89. I was like, oh, so this is why I didn't see it in the theaters. I was nearly 17 years old.
Yeah.
And I think Darren, like what you were saying, you were 12 when this came out. I think that's like the perfect age for this.
Yeah, it is. And I did a little research. So when I looked into when this movie came out, apparently Orion Pictures, the production company that put out the movie, they tested the film. It did really well with tests, and they had so much confidence in it, and they thought it was going to be a huge blockbuster. They were like, "Yeah, let's put this out in the summer." So this movie,
no!
yeah,
Oh no!
yeah. So this movie came out the same day as another movie that we've talked about on this podcast, When Harry Met Sally. Yep. It came out a week after License to Kill, the James Bond film with Timothy Dalton, right. And it came out 2 weeks after Lethal Weapon 2 and Weekend at Bernie's.
And it came out a month after Batman.
That too, yes.
Batman, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yeah. I very distinctly remember the summer of '89 because I was like right smack dab in the middle of high school then, and I remember the anticipation for that because like we were going to get a new James Bond movie, we were getting a new Star Trek movie, we were getting Lethal Weapon 2, we were getting the first serious Batman movie, and so I mean, being a 17-year-old nerd in the summer of '89, it was like, oh my god, this is going to be the best summer ever, and yeah, some of those movies worked well, some less so, but yeah, I don't think there was really room for UHF in the summer of '89.
Yeah, this film had a budget of $5 million, made $6 million, so it wasn't quite the blockbuster Orion was hoping. And I believe Orion actually went bankrupt like a year after this movie came out, or 2 years after.
God.
Yeah,
It was
I
rough.
looked up the IMDb trivia for this movie, and apparently, Weird Al's DVD commentary, when the Orion logo comes up, he starts singing, "They're bankrupt now." So
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, Orion used to be a big deal back in the 80s. They had some hits. But
it kind of was. It kind of was. You don't hear so much Orion anymore. I don't think there's any like Orion nostalgia out there. But
yeah.
Oh,
hey,
when that
I've got the
credit sequence came
DVD.
in, I felt nostalgia.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I think yeah, absolutely.
Darren, you were good enough to loan me your copy of the DVD, so I could watch it, and I didn't have to like track it down to the library or on streaming or anything. So I've got the description on the back of the DVD. I'm gonna just read that for people who might not know about this movie. Weird Al Yankovic, Kevin McCarthy, Inner Space, Michael Richards, Seinfeld, David Bowie, I think its name is spelled Bow, or maybe it's
Yeah.
Bowie, the Cable Guy, Victoria Jackson, Saturday Night Live, and Fran Drescher, the nanny, star in this inspired comedy about an offbeat guy who turns a deadbeat TV station into a raging success. Broadcasting Weird Al's unique brand of humor, UHF is a place you'll want to visit with increasing frequency. George Newman, Weird Al, is a daydreamer whose hyperactive imagination keeps him from holding a steady job until his uncle hires him to manage Channel 62, a station that's losing money and viewers fast. But when George replaces the station's reruns with bizarro programs like Wheel of Fish and Roll's Wild Kingdom, where poodles fly from third-story windows, ratings begin to soar. Can George find the money he needs to stay on the air? Stay tuned.
Ooh. Sounds captivating.
Sounds classic. This is a classic 80s versus like little guy versus the big corporate monster movie.
Yeah.
Right? This is such a basic 80s premise.
Yeah.
Tried and true formula. Yeah, we like, even though like the 80s was the decade of where corporate greed heads became really prominent, we were still making all these movies about defying the corporate greed heads.
Yeah, and it kind of makes sense that people would want to make these movies and see them. The weird thing is that it was the corporate greed heads that were okaying production on these movies, and that's basically shows you what you need to know about how hard it is to get out from underneath the thumb of this big monstrous culture we've made.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Wait, tell the masses there, Frank. Tell them what's up.
Yeah, Weird Al, ahead of his time. He's trying to teach us things.
Right.
Yeah, like at one point in the movie, there was a bit where they were making some gun control jokes, and I just was like, oh god, I'm so freaking depressed. This is still topical.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think the guy said like gun controls for wimps and commies.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. This was obviously a George Lucas like CGI. They added it in many decades. Nope. That was still a problem back in '89.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's just like, 30 odd years later, and we're still having these same stupid debates.
Right.
Yeah.
Still rolling that boulder up the hill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's interesting, despite the early like obstacles this movie had, obviously in theaters, and most people obviously did not watch it in theaters, and most people who have seen it have since seen it in some kind of like low budget. And right, I managed to see it free streaming on no less than 4 different platforms yesterday. But I was like, oh, where am I going to find this? I don't know where my DVD is. Oh, it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere.
Did you watch it like one time on each platform, just with 4 separate screenings?
I almost. I started watching it on YouTube, and I was like, and then my wife was interested, and I was like, okay, let me log in to see if I could cast that to our television. And my wife was interested. There's big quotes, air quotes on that. That was sarcasm. She was willing to let me put it on. And when I turned on the television, I was already logged into the Roku channel, because the night before we had watched the Weird Al story, the Al Yankovic story again for the first time with friend of the podcast, John Minus.
Hey.
He hadn't seen it before. And when I put it on, I was like, I wonder if if UHF is on Roku, and yep, it's free on Roku too. So yeah, just watch it everywhere, folks. This is the end of the podcast, right? This is where we say whether or not we should recommend it for people, save them an hour or two. Do it. Watch this movie immediately.
Yep, that's it. We're done. Nerds out.
All right, nerds out.
Um,
Oh, all right.
I'm going to say not so much.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it didn't really work for me, and I realized like I'm watching it as a 50-year-old dude instead of like a 12-year-old dude in the 80s, which is really the optimal way to watch this movie. So like if you have time travel and you can time travel back to 1989 and you can somehow make yourself to be 12 years old, when you're taking that time travel trip where they're saying on the social media, you can go back and talk to yourself at age 12, but you can only say 3 words or you can only say 10 seconds. Maybe you can make this part of that same trip.
Yeah.
I don't know why you're offered a time travel trip, and yet you're somehow so severely limited by what you can say to your past self. That seems to kind of defeat the purpose of such a trip, but whatever.
Okay. I mean, I think it writes itself. I would, the 3 words I would say to my young self if I got the time travel was go watch UHF.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, it's just helpful, right? Just helpful life advice.
Yeah.
I don't know what the appropriate age for this film was. I mean, 12, sure. I think if you're a kid or whatever, you'd enjoy this film. But you have to imagine they certainly didn't expect it to be just little kids when they put it out. And yeah. I don't think his fan base, like the Dr. Demento fan base, which is kind of like the origin of all this weird, goofy parody music and, just weird movies. And this cult status that the film has now, it must have been for older people. So like, if you haven't seen this movie and love it already, I can't expect you to have missed the boat on this. Like right. No other nerd you've ever run into in the last 20 to 30 years has ever suggested, hey, have you seen Weird Al?
Yeah, that's what you mean.
Yeah, I think also, like part of why it didn't work so great for me this time around was because I did know a lot of the gags already just through cultural osmosis. Yeah. Like I knew he does a parody, the Money for Nothing video from Dire Straits with Beverly Hillbillies, and I remember that playing on MTV and on whenever Weird Al had a half-hour special on VH1 or something, he'd play that. And I've seen clips of bits, like I was familiar with the Conan the Librarian and the Gandhi 2. And hell, I remember like Opie and Anthony, the radio DJs, they used to use sound clips from this movie. As,
really?
Like, recurring sound clips, like the, stupid, you're so stupid. And yeah, I remember those were like part of their regular repertoire on that show. So even though I've never seen the movie from beginning to end before, it was very, very familiar still.
And if you've ever seen Weird Al in concert, he's had full clips from the movie playing, usually during costume changes. So obviously there's a fat suit for when he does fat on stage, and it takes a little bit to get into that suit.
Right.
And while he's doing that, they'll play one of the clips from the movie. So little extra information, and please, if you have a structure for this that you'd rather go for, just tell me to shut up, and I will cut that out of the podcast.
You think we have a structure for this podcast? That's adorable.
Structure,
but like
what's that?
So the secret origin of Non-Productive in many ways is UHF.
Oh,
when we were originally a production department in a college radio station, we would air sketches, and we called the group Non-Productive just as a play on the production department. And these sketches, amongst the ones we recorded originally, like original sketches that we would write and record, we would also record, we'd sample things from the UHF movie. So there was a time early in Non-Productive, before we were a podcast network or available digitally, when we were just on FM radio, you could hear the full audio of Conan the Librarian or Wheel of Fish or something else like that. So a lot of these sketches did work their way into early Non-Productive, and conceptually the idea of what if we owned our own network and we put whatever we wanted on the air? Is Non-Productive. That's our website. That's non-productive.com. And all the shows, including the one you're listening to right now, the only reason we shove them on the air is because that early concept of let's have a place, of a weird place of our own, or a place for weirdos. I think a lot of it comes from this film,
I could
which
see
is
that.
crazy.
Yeah, I could see that. It's definitely. I think that's the thing that a lot of people gravitated towards with this film. It just feels like a movie for just oddball weirdos. Like a lot of the sketches, like you said, I don't know. This movie's kind of interesting because it does at times it feels like something out of like Kentucky Fried Movie. Some of the little sketches, and then sometimes,
Exactly.
yeah, and then sometimes it feels like something from the Zucker Brothers, like Police Squad or Airplane, especially during George Newman's dream sequences, like the Indiana Jones opening or the Rambo dream sequence. It feels like, I feel like something Police Squad would have done. So and just like the vibe of it is just very offbeat. The way they're making all these like references to other things in movies, Emo Phillips popping out of nowhere, just things that you could tell like only a certain sect of dorky nerd would get and appreciate.
Yeah, it's very Kentucky Fried Movie, very Amazon Women on the Moon, where it's just sort of a rapid fire thing. A lot of parodies in there. I remember on the VH1 Weird Al Behind the Music, they talked to Emo Phillips because like those two are friends in real life, and I know they just played Carnegie Hall together. I think.
Ooh,
yeah.
And Emo Phillips at one point he holds up one of his residual checks from UHF to the camera, and it was like a grand total of 30 cents.
Yeah.
He just says, "The gift that keeps on giving."
Yeah, big money.
I remember that same bit from UHF. Yeah.
Yeah.
From VH1.
Yes.
And there's so many little, like, a lot of this is certainly for weirdos, and a lot of it is also for like comedy nerds.
Yeah.
So Frank Conniff, TV's Frank, right, from MST3K, you know, definitely someone who makes content for the weird kid. Once said, I think when Emo Phillips was at Carnegie Hall, that Emo Phillips was the greatest comedy writer of all time, or the greatest living comedy writer. And when you look in through the work of Emo Phillips, he's very weird, certainly oddball, but like there's a craftsmanship, there's an interesting way he delivers jokes, even in his one little bit where he cuts off his thumb in this. It's done differently than even I remember it. Like upon rewatching it, I thought he said, "Isn't my face red?" when the blood squirts all over his face. But no, he was just saying it was embarrassing. He was just sort of like kind of put off by the entire process. There's no screams of pain or any. It's not over the top, but that makes it over the top. So I do think there's a little element in this film that is just, you have to really think way too hard on some of these things, and then you find them funny.
I remember, like, Emo Phillips, he actually has written one of my favorite stand-up comedy jokes of all time. And I don't really remember the routine, but it was him as a kid. It was him being called into the principal's office. And the principal said, "Emo, emo, emo." And I said, "I'm the one in the middle, you drunken slob." And I'm probably paraphrasing, but that is literally one of the cleverest jokes I've ever heard in a stand-up act. But
yeah, and there's things that like I even now I'm still discovering, and it's odd because I recognize how if you Trumbull telling me that he wasn't like 100% into this does not surprise me at all. Not because of him, but because like, yeah, this is an awkward meal, this film. But like finding out that the Kipper kids were in this, and I'm like, I have seen them since I was 10. And I had no idea what the whoa. And I think I've even done that with friends.
Yeah, I was wondering what the hell that was. Yeah, I had no idea who they were.
I happened to pay attention to the credits because I guess now I've gotten used to watching the credits to see if there's like a post-credit sequence, which would blow my mind if there was a post-credit sequence
Yeah.
for 1989's UHF. There wasn't, by the way, but I
Well,
noticed
I
the
mean, it
name and I'm
wasn't
like,
unheard of to have a post-credit sequence. Like Ferris Bueller had one
yes,
in
yeah,
the
and that's
80s.
the
Yeah.
first one I could think of, but I'm sure there were others. But and it was like the Kipper Kids, and I'm like, wait a minute, and there was like this indie weirdo comedy troupe out
Oh,
of like New York from the 70s and 80s that whole thing flew over my head for decades. And then I'm like, oh, this is a nod to something really weird. This would be I guess somebody showing up. This would be like a kid watching Arrested Development in 30, 40 years and being like, why is he painting himself blue? What's that about?
oh yeah, yeah.
And then you're like, oh, there was a troupe that did that. There was Blue Man Troupe is a thing. It's so there's so much weird stuff in this film uh that I feel like every time we say the word weird in this podcast, someone should take a drink and we would be responsible for many poisonings.
Yeah,
Yes.
like I think there's like things like that. I didn't even know that until you just said it just now because I like when they had that the whoa twins. I was like, what the hell is that? But I part of me kind of appreciates that. Well, the script was written by Weird Al Yankovic and his I think his manager and the guy who directed John Levy or Levy,
Jay
and
Levy.
yes, Jane Levy, yes, and yeah, and they would just put in these things that you can tell that like they probably knew not everybody in their audience would get it, but they knew the right people would get it, and they thought it was funny, so it'd stay in. Like I
Hmm.
said before, like I saw this movie before I saw Close Encounters, so I didn't understand that mashed potato volcano joke. I didn't understand the very end.
It's not a volcano. It's Devil's Tower.
All
Yeah,
right,
and I
whoa, all right, sorry.
oh,
I'm sorry.
we
I
got a
cannot let the Close Encounters slander pass.
I just was that slander? I just didn't know what it was.
It's not a volcano, Darren.
Oh
Get
my
your facts straight.
the
Jeez.
entire point of the film was that it wasn't a volcano.
But yeah, like I didn't know that. I didn't see Gone with the Wind, so I didn't understand the ending of this film where they parody Gone
Yeah.
with the Wind. And again, the scene with Raul from Raul Wild's Kingdom, R.I.P. Trinidad Silva, who played Raul. I didn't understand that we don't need no stinking badges line because I had never seen the treasure of Sierra Madre, so that line totally went over my head. Like my dad had to explain it to me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's part of what like being in a little cult film. So back in the day, before the monkey's paw wish of geekdom being like the most popular subculture out there,
Hmm.
you had to hunt for your tribe. You had to find people who were weird like you, or
This
maybe
is
you
true.
were
Yes.
forced to find people that were weird like you. And yeah, that part of the deal was that like you got all these little references. Like if I made that sound wow to the right group of people, I would be ignored by most of them,
Right.
right? And then a few people would point and be like, yeah, UHF, and then we would all kind of know it. Badges, we don't need no stinking badges. I did not know until film school or like until a film class in college. I didn't even know that was based on a film. It felt like it was a reference to something. I had no idea what. I think I
Hmm.
knew what a Wilhelm scream was before I realized movies reuse sound effects. All these little things make you part of the club. So I guess finding it out like decades later that, oh yeah, this is the context of some stuff. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't hit as well as if you grew up with it. And
Yeah.
that's why it's hard to make a cult film.
Yeah.
You gotta
No, you
grow
can't.
into it.
You can hardly ever make a cult film while intending to make a cult film.
Yeah.
And I think most of the great cult films come by their weirdness, honestly. Like there was a reference that hit me in here was early in the film where Weird Al's character George goes to the UHF station that he's been given essentially by his uncle. He meets with the scientist character.
Philo.
I can't. Yeah, and Milo's like, oh, and I have my interocitor here, and the interocitor is like the thing in This Island Earth, the
Oh
big
my god, that's
computer.
why. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know This Island Earth pretty well because that's the movie that they riffed in MST3K the movie. Um, so there were a lot of interrogator jokes in there, so that popped out at me.
Yeah, actually, just to bring up, since you mentioned MXT3K, according
Mhm.
to what I read on IMDb, Weird Al actually wanted Joel Hodgson to play the role of Philo originally, but Joel turned it down because he didn't think he was a good actor or a good enough actor to do it.
And he wasn't. Like, I love Joel, but, like, he was very awkward.
Yeah.
And Joel was, like, an area stand-up comic. He was a prop comedian. Maybe MST yeah, I think MST3K may have just started being more popular around that time, but he would have been more known as
Yeah.
prop comic than anything else. So, yeah, it would have been interesting.
89, 90 was like right around the time they were getting started on uh, Comedy Central, or I think it was the Comedy Channel back then.
Right. So the
I
role of
remember there was the Comedy Channel, and then neither one of them was quite making a go of it as a comedy oriented cable channel, so they merged and they became Comedy Central.
right, yes, I
Yeah.
do remember that. So yeah, so then the role of Philo went to Anthony Geary, who is most well known for his role as Luke Spencer on General Hospital, and I think
Mm.
I think it was like a weird choice. Like they never thought of him
Oh,
to be it.
okay. That's why he looked familiar. I was looking at him and I was like, I know that face from somewhere, but I couldn't quite place it, because he looked a little different. He has like the goatee and the glasses.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
okay, so
he's
that was Luke from Luke and Laura. Okay,
yes,
okay.
absolutely. But then it
And
turned yeah.
I know that Jeannie Francis is married to Jonathan Frakes, Riker from Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Oh, nice. Okay, I didn't
Yeah,
know that. But yeah, like I
just a
think
random bit of trivia in my head.
yeah, but I think it turned out Anthony Geary was a big fan of Weird Al, and he wanted to do it, and he was really good at doing that deadpan delivery, so he got the gig.
That's cool. I mean, it's a very interesting eclectic cast in this movie. Like the villain is Kevin McCarthy, who's probably best known from, well, he's known for Inner Space, but he's probably best known for being in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. He was in the original back in the day, and I know he has a cameo in the '70s remake. Uh, and I'm sure it was because of that he was cast. Fran Drescher is in this movie, pre Nanny.
Yeah. And
Michael
that's what
Richards, pre
so
Seinfeld.
the last two, the Michael Richards and Fran Drescher. So this is one of the reasons why this movie continues to be weird.
Hmm.
Because, like, if you watched it, for example, if I started watching it like I watched it again in the mid '90s or even early 2000s, I think that's when I first was like, "Wait a minute, Stanley? That's Kramer." And I've
Right.
seen the movie dozens of times, but because Kramer wasn't Kramer until after, it wasn't even weird at that point.
Yeah.
It wasn't weird until I had seen Seinfeld, hadn't seen UHF for a while, went back. Same thing with Fran Drescher. Oh my God, she's the reporter character. Wow.
Yeah.
So there's all
Yeah.
these little things that come up afterwards because it's such a odd, eclectic mix of people in this thing.
I mean, Billy Barty is in this movie. Billy Barty pops up like 30 minutes in. I was like, Billy Barty!
Dr.
Uh,
Demento's in it, you know?
is he? I missed him.
He's the it's in one of the credit sequences for Stanley Spadowski's Clubhouse. Um Spadowski's Clubhouse, there's like a guy who's being fed whipped cream in the audience, surrounded by
Hmm.
children. So for some reason, there's a grown man in that audience as well,
Oh
and
boy.
that's him. That is Dr. Demento.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, that's nice. I mean, yeah, Weird Al does seem to remember and take care of his friends. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, like I think that's. I mean, I know for John, for you, this movie didn't work, but I think for me, it did work just because, again, like I saw it when I was a young age, and I don't know, there's just something about the sort of manic, almost anarchistic vibe that goes throughout this movie, and the performances I really dig. Like, I know this is a Weird Al movie. There's an argument to be made. I think like Michael Richards almost steals this movie. Like every
oh
scene
yeah.
he's in is hilarious to me.
I mean, he's certainly given it his all. I mean, yeah, watch it now. I mean, and I can only watch it through today's eyes, so I don't
Right.
really have nostalgia in the mix here. So I can just watch it, and I'm just like, oh, everybody's going at like 11 out of 10 in this movie, and it gets a little exhausting for me to watch now. I wish people had modulated their performances a bit more, but it kind of felt like just being around a hyperactive 6-year-old for a few hours, you know?
I see what you mean.
Yeah,
Okay.
you've done a podcast for Darren for a while now, and
Hmm.
I get
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Wait
Yes.
a minute.
Hey, wait a minute, you.
Whoa. I think we have to talk about the individual sketches overall. But I guess my last little thing, a little like meta uh, piece of information about UHF is it is also responsible for the Weird Al reconnaissance, Renaissance, I guess.
Or the
I don't,
reconnaissance. Yes, he's been under
reconnaissance. What
surveillance
he
by the FBI
definitely
for quite some time.
for the poodle flying scene. I
Sure.
do believe
Wow.
that was cut on some of the airings, because this time I didn't remember there was a pile of poodles underneath his window until
Yeah,
this
I
time.
saw that.
I,
That was,
I think there are cuts of this movie that doesn't have the pile of poodles, or they cut it down a little bit where he throws the poodle out and you could hear the dog, like the dog is still alive, but
Yeah.
not in the actual version.
Well, maybe,
But
yeah, they could have easily cut that out when it was airing on TV or something for
yeah,
either for time or content. I don't know which. I mean, I'm sure that this was a movie that was cheap to acquire and easy for like local stations to air on Sunday afternoons. Darren, like you were
right.
saying, you were watching it on Channel 11, which is one of the local stations in the New York area here. But
Right. But the little bit of info is the SNL tie-in, the comic with the most SNL um, status. Obviously, is going to be Victoria Jackson in this film. Apparently, she, as you were saying, Trumbull, that like kind of Al keeps his friends close,
mhm.
and she was Victoria Jackson at the time, anyways, was so friendly with Weird Al, and he reached out to her to get him in touch with Nirvana, who was guesting on SNL at the
Oh,
time,
that's right. Yes.
because there was no other way. He couldn't get through to Nirvana, and he
Yes.
wanted to do a parody of them because he had just had a bad album. People were considering him the one or two hit wonder, because all he did was Michael Jackson parodies. And yeah, if not for this, I don't think we would have gotten Smells Like Nirvana, and that really did kind of light the fire back and bring Weird Al back from his original fame. And I think
It
once you
kind
make
of,
your
yeah.
second wave of
Yeah,
fame,
I think it
you could
kind of did. I
stay.
think Gen Xers in particular kind of rediscovered him
Yeah.
because of that. And I know Weird Al's told the story. He said like he got on the phone with Kurt Cobain, and Kurt Cobain was like, "Yeah, you can do a parody of it. Is it going to be about food?" And Weird Al was
Yeah.
like, "No, actually, it's going to be about how nobody can understand your lyrics because you mumble."
So no matter how things ended up with Victoria Jackson, better left unsaid. You know,
Wait. How did things end up with Victoria Jackson?
no, just
Well, let
I
me
just
Google this. Oh no.
yeah.
Oh
So
no.
yeah,
Oh.
here's the thing. There's still a chance she is actually the funniest person who has ever been on SNL, and she is committed to the bit.
Like she's just doing this Andy Kaufman
This is an
esque
elaborate
performance.
Andy Kaufman esque
wow.
routine she's pulling on, and if so, wow,
The levels. The
the
levels.
levels.
Th-
Yeah.
That would be brilliant. I don't think it's true, but that would be brilliant.
It would be. Uh,
So transitioning into the sketches, if you want to, my
Yeah,
favorite aspect of all the sketches, you could start with almost any of them. I loved them all as a kid, and when I had a stupider sense of humor, I guess. But like what I almost forgot about was how super violent so many of them were,
yeah.
needlessly violent, and I love that. It was so fun this time around watching it again.
yeah, I
But
think
it's very cartoony violence. Like
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
like somebody gets literally split in half during the Conan the Librarian sketch,
don't you
Yeah,
know the Dewey Decimal System?
and he's bisected like from the middle of his head through the middle of his body.
and I told you, I've listened to the audio on that a million times. We used to
Mhm.
play it. I remember like thinking it was funny. I think when I was young, it was weird that Conan would talk about the Dewey Decimal System and be that passionate about it. There was probably a certain amount of like, it's fun to hear Schwarzenegger mimicry, like just very surface level whatever.
Yeah,
And And watching it this time, I'm like, oh, I have the nostalgia feels of laughter, but not like really laughing. And then that sword bisects that kid. And I totally forgot what happened. I thought he was beheaded, but he's just cut down the middle.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious because I'm like, why? What a choice to make. That must have cost so much money to make that one thing, that dummy that got cut and split in half. And it's just these little funny things that still make the movie fresh and gross.
Yeah, I think because of that, the film got a PG-13 rating instead of a PG. Like, I think
Yeah.
because I know Weird Al was like, yeah, I really didn't. He was trying to make it more PG, but I think because of things like that and a few other quote unquote gory, bloody scenes, that they pushed this film into PG-13. Even though no one really curses or anything, it's just like this cartoony violence, which is
That's
weird
the
because
real
even
reason, Darren.
like
I
even when you
wouldn't call it gory.
yeah, it's not
at
even
all.
gory.
Yeah.
Like the Conan Librarian thing where he splits the guy in half. There's no blood in there. That's what makes it even funnier.
Yeah.
It's just like a clean cut.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we found the real reason Darren didn't watch it back when he was 12. He was a law-abiding young man, and he could not get parental guidance. He was like, "No, I'm not going to go in this film."
That's right. That's
Another
right.
year.
My mommy and daddy wouldn't take me.
Yeah. There is any other bits that ring out to you guys?
I mean, I like the Rambo dream sequence. I thought that was pretty funny. Like the one part where in this movie, because Stanley Spadowski becomes such a huge hit on the UHF channel. Which sidebar, do you ever? There's that one like radio station in the middle of Secaucus. You ever seen that, like in the middle of the swamps, and drive by there, and it reminds you of UHF?
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I've wanted to work there for some reason. I was like, oh man. Oh, I know what the reason is. The movie UHF.
Right.
Just put unrealistic expectations in my head and also stupid ideas.
Right. Exactly. Like that. Every time I drive by there, I'm like, oh, that's the UHF building, I bet. But yeah. Anyway, so because Stanley Spadowski has become such a huge hit on this UHF channel, the competing channel run by R.J. Fleischer, Channel 8, decides to kidnap him at one point. And so at this point, George had a dream sequence where he goes to find him and save him. And then, of course, that dream sequence is a Rambo sequence. And while he's dressed up as Rambo with the Weird Al curly hair, mustache, and glasses, at one point somebody's like shooting at him, the gun, and he's like slowly gets his bow and arrow and walks slowly towards him while the guy's shooting at him. And he slowly walks towards him to the point where they're literally a foot away. And then he just shoots the arrow at the guy and the guy explodes. So
I'm trying desperately not to spoil anything about Weird, the Al Yankovic story, and I won't, except that there is a lot of that. There's a scene in the movie that mirrors this close enough that I was like, interesting.
Yeah, I watched that a couple weeks ago. I enjoyed that a lot more. I think that was much more my style of humor. And I think Weird Al's humor has evolved enough that, yeah, it speaks to me more. So
I can see that.
So, yeah. No, I just want to make it clear. I was so on this movie at best, but I love Weird Al. I just think he probably works better in smaller doses,
Right. You have more of a refined palate when it comes to your comedy.
I do. I mean, I was watching this entire movie with like one pinky out because I'm refined.
Wearing an ascot.
Yes, smoking with a cigarette holder. So, no, this doesn't quite work for me at all.
Yeah, but I mean, Trumbull, you're not alone, because like when this movie came out, it got mixed reviews. A lot of critics straight up hated it. Roger Ebert said that Yankovic's approach to satire and parody works for the short form music video, but doesn't work for full length movies. Roger Ebert said that Yankovic's lack of screen presence creates a dispirited vacuum at the center of many scenes.
Yeah.
And Siskel said, never has a comedy tried so hard and failed so often to be funny.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm glad those guys are dead.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, wait.
The mics are on, Frank.
Oh God!
You're
All right,
going hard, Frank.
maybe the producer could cut that out. He won't.
Maybe
No.
you should. I mean, if it makes you feel better, we discovered on our episode about Spies Like Us, Roger Ebert also super pervy.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's what I
Super
meant.
pervy.
Yeah, baby.
That's what I meant.
He goes off on this tangent when they're reviewing Spies Like Us, where he's all about like, "Hey, Vanessa Angel, hubba hubba hubba."
Yeah.
Actually, if that's all he said, it'd almost be cute. But
Yeah.
something tells me.
But yeah.
So
So like this movie, yeah, when it came out, it didn't do well at all. I think it was
Yeah.
out of theaters by the end of the month. I don't even think it was in
Well,
theaters for that
I'm
long.
reading on IMDb the trivia page on IMDb right now. It says Orion Pictures went bankrupt before this film was released, leaving the film with no publicity budget. So no wonder it didn't do well.
which is
Yeah.
weird because Orion Pictures, and I think MGM must have bought them after,
Something
because
like that, I think.
they
Yeah.
put out like a lot of movies that won Oscars, or at least were
Yeah,
nominated
they
for
were like
Oscars.
prestige.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm pretty sure. God, what is that? The Dances with Wolves came out after
Oh, yeah.
this movie,
Yeah,
so they must have
that was
they
like
changed
1990.
hands.
That's an Orion
Okay,
movie.
yeah, so they must have changed hands at some point, and then but they just long enough not to be able to support this movie and Weird Al. See, as much success as Weird Al has now, and I think you can look at it, and there is I can't do it. Weird Al Renaissance. Again, producer, edit that so I sound cool.
Okay.
Weird Al Renaissance. As much as there is
The
now,
Weird
like,
Al-a-sance? Do you want to try
maybe,
that?
yeah, I guess I'm not gonna do it again. No, that's
Okay.
just somebody else. People at home assume I said that at the first take, and it was
Yeah.
great. He had such difficulty for a long part of his career just staying relevant, which makes sense because parody song artists. I can't think of another one, maybe one other one that stayed relevant over a course of many years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
Maybe early. Yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead.
that's a thing. Like, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I kind of like what Weird Al's been able to do has been pretty incredible. Because when you think of song parodies, the shelf life on a song parody isn't very long. Like, unless it's something connected to a holiday, like Monster Mash or Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. Like song parodies, like they're cute for a couple of months or so, and then they're just old hat. So the fact that he's been able to have this decades long career based on song parodies is pretty remarkable. You got to admit that.
Absolutely, and I mean, I think he really has great selections of material. He writes genuinely clever lyrics. They're not just he doesn't go for like obvious jokes, and he writes really clever original material too.
Yeah.
And I mean, he does style parodies that he sometimes just nails it. Like his like Dare to Be Stupid is Devo style parody. It sounds like a Devo song, and I think Mark Mothersbaugh was like, "Oh yeah, that's like the greatest song that Devo never wrote." Frank's 2000-inch TV sounds eerily like an early 90s REM song. I listen to that for real. I get the urge to hear that every few months, and I just look it up on YouTube, and I'm like, Frank's 2000-inch TV. It's gorgeous. My dream is for REM to just reunite, play Frank's 2000-inch TV, and then just immediately break up again. I think that would be
that would work.
Fantastic. So, guys, I also looked up, since we were talking about Orion a while ago, I looked up the other films that Orion put out. And, I mean, they had some huge films. The Great Santini. They put out Author, Amadeus, Purple Rose.
That's right, Amadeus.
Yeah, Platoon, Hannah and Her Sisters, Hoosiers, Bull Durham, Mississippi Burning, Crimes and Misdemeanors, Dances with Wolves, Silence of the Lambs, and
Silence of the Lambs was like a couple of years later. They must have been bought out by some other company and literally just didn't have money to do VHS.
Silence of the Lambs won all the Oscars. It won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and I think Best Screenplay. It won like the big five, which was like the first time that had been done since One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and then before Cuckoo's Nest, it was like It Happened One Night. Like, I think those are still just the only 3 films to do that.
Yeah.
So I just love that at least there may be some evidence that they momentarily went into bankruptcy just long enough not to support this movie, and they come back swinging. Ah, good. I like that.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, it's
So
yeah, it's something else. It's something else.
Any other sketches that you really? Was there a single sketch, John, that you liked?
I still have, I think, a nostalgic affection for the Money for Nothing parody because I remember that watching that in the 80s and liking that a lot. And it's funny to look back on that now because that Dire Straits video, that like blew everybody's mind in like 85, 86, whenever that thing came out.
Computers. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, this was all animated with a computer. And it's like these, super blocky things. And and Weird Al just did that and made it about the Beverly Hillbillies, which is just the sort of random pop culture thing he does once in a while. So I liked that. The Indiana Jones the Raiders parody was kind of impressive because it does very closely duplicate the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah,
and doing that on a $5 million budget, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I wonder if that was. I always wonder if that was like rushed to put on, or planned even to be put on because it was coming out against Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which is the ballsiest thing in the world to do.
Yeah,
like, hey, you know what'll be fun?
Yeah.
We're gonna, and the fact that he's going for an Oscar, which is like, come on, man, who are you kidding?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's actually a kind of a funny parody of like kind of how Spielberg's career has pivoted. Like I think ever since probably Schindler's List, where he's just like, he wants those Oscars so bad. He wants to do those prestige movies, and he used to do just more kind of like just popcorn type blockbusters, like Jaws or Raiders, and I think even Close Encounters. Not that those films don't have some depth to them, but they're not primarily about the dramatics,
Right.
Yeah, very true. Let me think of something else. Oh yeah. I mean, another sketch that I really enjoyed in this film is the Geraldo Rivera parody they had in here, the Town Talk.
I was just going to bring that up.
Oh,
I don't know if people remember the Geraldo Rivera Al Capone Vault special anymore.
I only remember it as an anecdote of like bits that went poorly, and I remember watching this not like when I originally watched UHF, not picking up on the reference to Geraldo.
Yeah. So like Geraldo Rivera, this was like, of course, pre-Fox News. He was like this tabloid journalism guy, but actually I think he started out as a pretty respected journalist. And I think this was kind of the start of his downfall of being respected. He had this 2-hour primetime special on network TV where they were going to open up Al Capone's vaults, which I think were just like recently discovered or something like that. And they were going to open them up and explore them on live TV and apparently find all these amazing secrets. Like, were they going to find bodies? Were they going to find treasure? Were they going to find evidence of more crimes?
Yeah, Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah, and apparently nobody ever stopped to say, hey, maybe we should take a quick glimpse in there before we do this live 2-hour special. Because and he found like next to nothing in there. And so he just had to vamp and fill time.
stretch it out.
And it's just like, maybe if you do a live television event, plan it out a tad.
Then you lose the spontaneity, man.
I mean, like SNL, but Lord, they time things out. They write out things they're going to do. Yes, some spontaneous moments happen, but they kind of know what they're going to do to fill that hour and a half of network TV time. And Geraldo, not so much.
Well, in defense of Geraldo, they did find Charlie Rocket inside Al Capone's vault.
Oh,
he was the only thing there.
Oh boy.
Oh dear.
Too soon.
He was cursing. Oh no! Wait, hold on. I was just making a reference to the curse. The cursing. Was that Charlie Rocket or was that somebody else? Who cursed on
Charlie
SNL?
Rocket? Yes, he swore on air on SNL. They did a parody of Who Shot JR, and they were doing the sign off because like Charlene Tilton from Dallas was the host that week, and he was like sort of in character as JR still at the Good Nights, and he said like, "Oh yeah, somebody shot me. I'd like to know who the fuck did it." And
Ah, yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's what I was referencing. I thought it was
mm,
Charlie Rocca
Yeah.
who swore,
yeah,
not anything else.
Yeah, no, that was
yeah.
him, and that was the end of the Gene Dumanian era of SNL after that.
So I'll say this
Yeah.
one more time. Maybe we'll cut it out. Be like, in defense of Geraldo, they did find Charlie Rocket swearing in Al Capone's vault. So that was
Got
it. That was the only thing, and they immediately had to cut the 2-hour special short.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
Too soon.
Still too soon.
Still too soon.
Never not too soon. Yeah, and I mean this movie does have like a lot of stuff that still gives me the chuckles. Spatula City, just such a ridiculous thing to have in there, just a store to
That's
sell.
funny, just because spatula is a funny word to say.
It
Yeah.
really is. It's a funny word, spatula. And yeah, I don't know. There is just a. I mean, I will admit, John, like while it may not, I will. It doesn't quite hold up, but like I still have
Yeah.
a lot of affection for this film just because I grew up with it.
You don't have to defend it to me at all. I totally get why people would have affection for this film. And yeah, go nuts. I don't want to yuck your yum, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree with both of you. It is the perfect film and holds up 100%. Yes, I agree.
Okay, and I'll just throw in wow. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
So just a few more trivia things that I found when I was looking it up. So the Wheel of Fish sketch, the red snapper, very tasty.
Right.
Apparently they use real fish for that.
Yeah.
Which
looks like it.
yeah. So of course they did that. Of course the filming started at 4:30 p.m. on a hot summer day in a building that wasn't air conditioned, filled with hot
Great.
studio lights and over 100 extras. And yeah, apparently, according to Weird Al Yankovic, the filming conditions were "quote unquote" ripe.
Yeah. Hard to believe that didn't work out well.
Yeah, and also we mentioned Philo, the engineer at UHF. So they originally wanted Joel Hodgson to do it, and when Joel Hodgson, turned it down, they went to Crispin Glover to do it.
That works.
Yeah, and
that would have worked too.
Back to the Future fame, sure.
And I think he said he didn't want to do that, but he would play the part as that auto car salesman in that one commercial they had.
Oh,
where,
wow.
I forget the character's
He
name.
threatens to club the seal. Yeah.
Yes.
We're going crazy at Crazy Eddie's. Yeah.
He threatens to club an obviously not baby seal. It was actually a seal, not a seal lion. Or a sea lion, not a seal. I don't know. None of this matters. But yes, that guy. Okay.
Right. So Crispin Glover wanted to play that part, but neither Weird Al nor Jay thought he was right for the role, so they passed.
Wow.
So we almost had Crispin Glover in this film.
Too bad. I just want to wrap this up by saying my favorite joke in this film, I think still is when George, Weird Al's character, is in doing his kids show, and he's in the audience with the kids, and they're not interested, they're not feeling it, and he goes up to one little boy and says, "What's your name?" And the boy says, "Billy." "Billy what?" And Billy spits in his face.
Yeah.
For no reason. There is so much, and it lingers. Because George also is wondering, why did this escalate so quickly? And it did. The kid went from like, "I'm not interested, but I'll answer you," to "I'll spit in your face for asking my last name." There's something about that. Every time it comes on, I laugh my ass off. My friends and I who love this movie, we love that scene. It's the best.
It's a good scene. Like my favorite. I mean, it may not be PC, I guess, right now, because the lib snowflakes don't want you to laugh no more. But I think, I mean, supplies. That still gets a chuckle out of me.
There's no way of correcting that joke. It's entirely an accent joke. Yeah.
I'm just saying the word supplies, and that's all I'm gonna say. I'm just gonna walk right on back.
You don't want to spoil it.
Yeah. And
You don't want to spoil the
another piece of trivia I found. Apparently, Ginger Baker, the drummer for the band Cream, auditioned for the role of the panhandling homeless person who who wound up saving the station at the end by buying a ton of shares and stock of it.
Wow.
Which
I
is
like how you're like no spoilers, and then you give away the main plot point of the ending.
well, there's an old movie. We can do that.
Yeah, no, I just think it's funny that that came like 2 minutes after you're like, oh, I'm not going to spoil this.
It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Someone is throwing
It's
their
fine.
iPod out the window.
It says here that Jennifer Tilly and Ellen DeGeneres both auditioned for the role of Terry Campbell, which I'm assuming that's Victoria Jackson's role.
Yes.
It says Ellen DeGeneres was the first choice, but never happened for reasons unknown to Weird Al Yankovic. So, I could kind of see Jennifer Tilly in that role. I have trouble with seeing Ellen DeGeneres in that role, but
yeah, that's true. Like it's, I don't know. But then again, the character of Terry isn't really central. I mean, I hate to say it, but she's not really central to the movie.
Much less Victoria Jackson in this movie than I was expecting. I was expecting her to be in it throughout, but she kind of just dumps Al early in the film, pops up again like somewhere in the middle, and then at the end she kind of comes back and she's like, "Oh, I'll take you back, but I just have to be a part of your weird fantasies from now on. Not those kind of fantasies, you pervs.
Hey,
the movie parody fantasies."
But yeah, I mean that's weird. Like I just don't know if like they kind of had to write her out a little bit just because maybe her, because I believe she was still on SNL at the time, so maybe something like that, or she had some other obligations, or like that's just how her character was written. But yeah, because she's not really in it that much, which is still surprising to me. And so she doesn't really play like too central a part of the movie, really. Which is, and yeah, I mean, I know like I know a ton of people aren't huge, I mean, as far as Victoria Jackson, the actor and whatnot, like she doesn't really get mentioned that much whenever people talk about SNL and their favorite eras or their favorite cast members. I mean, but I mean, I don't know.
I feel like she's fallen down the memory hole a little bit. I think probably largely because she just hasn't had any huge successes since she left SNL. So I think she's a little forgotten in that way. I even remember in one of the reunion specials, Tom Hanks came out and did a sort of questions from the audience segment or a parody of what they do in the monologues a lot. And Victoria Jackson stood up and she was like, "Yeah, Tom, I have a question. Whatever happened to me?" Which was sort of a parody because she did a lot of dumb blonde material on the show. And I thought that was cute, and I like that she had enough of a sense of humor to make a joke about that. But
yeah, I think that's it.
She apparently kind of went off the deep end somewhere in the last 10 years or so, or maybe she was always there and just kept it better hidden. I don't know.
I'm telling you, the ultimate long con of a joke. This is the dumbest blonde she has ever played. It's just a character. It's just gonna blow our minds when this.
It's all.
She'll just get an Oscar for that.
Yeah,
it's playing the long game.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I mean, I don't know if that's because it seemed like on her time on SNL, they kind of written her that way and just kind of put her in that role as almost like Goldie Hawn in Laugh-In, where she's just like the bubbly, goofy, airheaded blonde person, and it seems like SNL kind of did that to her, where she just like kind of was playing that role. She got a few chances to sort of stretch beyond that, like whenever she did her Roseanne Barr impression or something like that. But I think for the most part, they kind of put her in that role, and also she was on an era where she was like up against some like bigger stars that were like way more sort of adept at sketch comedy than her, like Jan Hooks and Dana Carvey and Hartman and Nora Dunn and stuff like that. So they kind of eclipsed her a little bit too, I think.
Yeah. But I mean, I think I thought she was good on the show. I enjoyed her on the show in her era, and Yeah, I mean, she's definitely a part of what I would say is still my favorite cast, because that was the cast like when I first started watching on a really regular basis. So
Yeah, no,
I will
absolutely.
always have a nostalgic affection for her because of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I
All
don't
right. Well,
know.
we had like one of our listeners, Casey Killingsworth, he wanted to contribute to this episode, so he wanted to call in. So he called the non-productive hotline, which
Mm.
I'm not even sure I realized we had a hotline, but we have a hotline, guys. So Frank, do you have the number of that hotline offhand? I don't
I
have it up
do,
on.
but what's it worth for you?
I don't know. I thought you might want to promote your
Oh,
business. Silly me.
oh crap! You're right. 973-4040 MPN. That's 4040676.
All
Okay.
right. And so you've listened to this before. I think Darren and I are hearing this for the first time. Is Casey talking about UHF, or is he talking about the new weird movie? I'm not even sure.
Yes, and I'll hit play right now for you.
Okay, let's lay it on us.
Well, thank you, Darren and John, for finally inviting me to be some small part of the SNL Nerds podcast. Sorry I couldn't be a guest on the UHF episode, but it does mean a lot that you invited me to leave this voicemail to play on the air. And as far as Weird Al UHF related memories, I'd say seen it a few times. I even wrote a paper about it for an art media class, and the professor gave me a B minus, saying, I should have talked about how the movie shows more of the hypocrisy in media, and just, come on, I can't write about UHF and make it that angry. But I'd have to say my all-time favorite Weird Al memory would have to be at one of the 10 of his concerts I've seen, and specifically one of the 5 where I've met him at a VIP meet and greet afterwards. So, it was 4 years ago on the first leg of the ridiculously self-indulgent, ill-advised Vanity tour, where he just did a completely different set list of all obscure original songs every night. And right before that tour started, he was taking Twitter requests from fans as to what deep cuts we wanted to see in the set list. And I tweeted a few, Dare to Be Stupid, One More Minute, some of the originals from Polka Party, and of course Straight Out Litwood. And then like a day later, I tweeted those at him, and like a day later I tweeted, oh, and I'd also love to see you do Velvet Elvis live, because from some of the footage I saw on YouTube, that sounds really good. I'd love to see it live. And this was like a week or day before the show. And he did all of those requests but Velvet Elvis. But when it was my turn to meet him after the show, I just said, hi, Al. And he just looked at me and said, Casey. And then he just very excited to see me. And I thought he was just reading my name tag, and then he said to me, nice live tweeting, by the way. And then, cause, I was live tweeting the set list, because there's a different set list every night for, the fans, and because we want to keep track. And he said, well, I'm glad we could get to all your Twitter requests, and I'm sorry that we didn't play Velvet Elvis, and I'm apologizing in advance that we're not playing it the next night in Grand Junction when you'll see us, because this was in Denver on that tour, and the next night me and a few friends drove like 5 hours back and forth just to see him in Grand Junction, just to see 2 different set lists on that tour. And he complimented me on my live tweeting and apologized for the one song he didn't play at that show, but of course, I thank him for the incredible set list we got anyway. And that was my favorite Al memory, the moment I found out that he, even though he doesn't follow me on Twitter, he knew who I was and knew me personally from Twitter. And then he did that same tour again this year. I saw him again in Denver 2 nights in a row in June. And the very first song he opened with him the very first night was a song called Velvet Elvis, which I'd requested the previous tour on Twitter. I'd like to think it's a little bit more than a coincidence, but anyway, those were that was my favorite all-time Weird Al memory, and I'm glad you could invite me to be a part of the show. And here's to hoping that you guys do an episode on his newest biopic, Weird the Al Yankovic Story, so I could be a part of that, and it does have some SNL in it, so it's a tenuous excuse for you guys to cover it and me to be on your podcast. So thanks. And
all right, thanks, Casey. It's a fantastic story.
Thanks for calling in. We appreciate that. Yeah, it was cool to hear about your Weird Al experiences, and I'm glad he played most of your suggestions at least.
Brush with greatness. Yeah, like the fact that he recognized him off of Twitter, that's a big deal to anybody. Like when a celeb knows your name, that's like, oh shit. Chick just...
Weird Al's a stalker. That's interesting to know.
Yeah, wow. There you go.
You heard it here first.
Heard it here first. So we put the word out on Twitter that we were doing this movie. Got one tweet from our good friend Manette Maradi saying about this film, UHF. I appreciate how at certain times it feels like I was watching a Weird Al sketch movie more than an actual movie with a straightforward plot. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good description of the movie. Yeah. I think it is more of a sketch movie than a plot movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's our episode, guys. UHF. It's I say I give it a thumbs up. Frank gives it a thumbs up. John Trumbull gives it a meh.
Thumbs up. Yeah, thumbs up all around. That's 6 thumbs up. Everybody gave multiple thumbs up.
Yes.
That's how it goes. That's how I remember it.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I get it, that it is an acquired taste. And oddly that you have to acquire at a particular time in your life, I think, at this point anyways.
I just feel like I basically missed my window on this movie, and that's probably why I didn't see it back in the day, and it's probably why I've never really felt the need to check it out since.
Right.
So
if I can amend what I would do with 3 words in a time travel scenario, I would tell my past self, make Trumbull UHF, and hope that it works out, because I'm sure you're gonna. I might have to pick your entire family and force them.
You don't have a lot to go on there. You don't have my first name. You don't have the word C in there.
Yeah, no watch, no C. It could be.
I don't think your message is going to be understood.
In fact, I may have already gotten that message and just didn't know what to do with it until this exact moment.
Yeah,
I we weren't even living in the same state then.
Yeah,
so.
I think with that message, you're going to end up building a UHF station in Trumbull, Connecticut, because you're not really.
That would explain the UHF station I have in Trumbull, Connecticut.
Yeah. See. Okay. Well, we've solved that mystery.
That's why that happened. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you know what? Joke's on me. I'm sorry about it.
Well, we've solved the mystery of Frank's life. So, Frank, thanks so much for making the time to come on and do this, and have fun editing this. Frank, is there anything you want to plug before you go?
Yes. Our Patreon. If you don't back us on Patreon, I'm going to start cutting out the nouns of these podcasts. So all you get is verbs and adjectives.
Wow.
Adverbs. That's it.
What about pronouns?
That's all you get. Pronouns? We have major problems with pronouns as it is.
Oh boy.
This is the 21st century, and those are going to get cut out anyways. Libs.
Right.
Back our Patreon at patreon.com/non-productive. No, /non-pro. Somebody's going to edit that. Don't worry. And you'll find ways of giving us money, so that we will live to see another day.
Thanks, Frank.
Yes,
perfectly said, Frank. Perfectly said.
All our patrons get a share in the station that is non-productive.
That's right.
Yeah.
SOS. Save our station. And as always, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Darincredible. That's DARI Incredible. I also have a Mastodon account, which I'm trying to figure out how the hell that works. So once I got a handle on that.
I think you're at Darincredible at Mastodon.social. And I think I'm Frank Hablawi at Mastodon.social. And I
Yes.
think Trumbull Comic at Mastodon.social. If we get one follow from this,
Yeah.
I think it'll all be worth it.
Well,
Right.
you know what? Hey, our friend of the show, Manette Moratti, already followed me on Mastodon.social.
Oh,
So she
shit.
doesn't count. It has to be a new one from this podcast.
You count, Manette.
You
You are valid. You matter.
don't say that
I
about our
didn't mean
one
it that
fan.
way. I didn't mean it that way, but now that you mention it,
Oh, God.
hmm.
Oh, you're killing us, Frank. You're killing us.
You're killing us. You're killing. I understand why we don't have you on the show that much.
This was a mistake.
This is what we do with people. He's gonna cut out our nouns.
The
We'll be
edit
left with
notes.
just the adjectives and the adverbs, and that'll be horrible.
You know what I'm gonna do? If anyone new backs the SNL Nerds on our Patreon this episode, I'm gonna release a cut of this episode without my audio track. I'm gonna remove my audio track from it. It'll just be Darren and John talking to each other with moments of silence and then them reacting to it.
So it's like the Garfield without Garfield cut of the podcast.
Yes, exactly. Yes, Garfield minus Garfield cut of this podcast. That'll be for you, and it'll only be available for SNL Nerds Patreon backers.
I would kind of love that. That would be awesome.
Sounds like a bargain to me. What a deal.
Yeah.
So anyway, did I plug my socials? It's Trumbull Comic at Twitter, TRUMBULL and the word comic, and then I'm also on the Mastodon.social under the same handle. And we're at SNL Nerds Show on Twitter. Who knows how much longer that's going to last?
Yes. As the platform slowly erodes and falls into the ocean, who knows how long we're going to be there.
Remember when Twitter was like working how it was supposed to, like a month ago?
Yeah. Were we ever so young, John?
Before idiot billionaire boy bought it and then let the other horrible, evil idiot billionaire back on, and
simpler times.
I just wanted an edit function. That's all I wanted. Edit function, you are Nazis. That's all.
All I want's a Pepsi. Just one Pepsi.
Anyway, what are we doing next week, Darren?
Next week, because it's Thanksgiving weekend, I did a little searching, tried to find a movie that has a Thanksgiving scene in it. I found this movie that we've mentioned on the podcast from time to time again. The Judd Apatow film, Funny People, with Adam Sandler and Seth Rogen.
Funny People. Yes, I've not seen this one since it originally came out. I have opinions on it. It'll be interesting to revisit it and see how it holds up. Did not remember that there was a Thanksgiving scene in it. I'm just going on your word on that.
Okay. I mean, it's technically like a Friendsgiving theme where, like, you know, a bunch of friends come over and then Seth invites Adam Sandler's character over. But yeah, it's not a long scene, but it's in there.
All right, that counts. That counts.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take it.
Yeah, you will.
There's a tenuous connection, which is really all we need here at the SNL Nerds. So, all right, next week, Funny People with Adam Sandler and Seth Rogen, directed by Judd Apatow, and Leslie Mann's in it too, and other people that I don't remember at the moment. So, check us out then. But until then, Nerds out.
This has been a non-productive media presentation. Executive producer Frank Hablawi. This program and many others like it on the Non-Productive Network is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. Please share it, but ask before trying to change it or sell it. For more information, visit non-productive.com.